Yeah, we're working this Monday and doing our meeting update, our project update up for the week, and the NIST technical findings came out last week for Champlain Towers South. We're wanting to give a little update to you all. We did a presentation last week on our typical concrete repair project where we talked about this, but I thought it'd be interesting to mention to you all as recommendations to associations with who have multi-story buildings, perhaps with a pool deck, etc. In general, it doesn't matter though, but there are a few things, the takeaways that I thought would be really good. Very simply, what I gathered from the findings were that there were three things that stood out on what triggered the failure. They had a lot of findings. There were design errors, construction errors when it was originally built. But one of the things regarding corrosion and breakdown, how would we as engineers have identified, how would we have known that there was a problem? And from the report, it didn't talk about, there was a punching shear failure, but it did not state that there were cracks on the underside of the slab. And so most of the cracks were on the top side because the slab is in, it's a negative moment area where the slab wants to bend this way. And so you see, puts tension on the top of the slab, and that's why you see cracks on the top over the column and not on the underside due to the curvature of the slab over the column. So an engineer or person that lived in the building perhaps may not have seen cracks on the underside of the column where the punching shear took place on the slab, but because they were on the top. However, what did happen is there was tremendous amount of deflection because there was already failure. So what you saw was in the report was that there was a lot of movement at the planters. So the planters moved so severely that they cracked significantly, and you could see major separation. There was another thing too, the gate, the swing gate that allowed you to go in and out from the pool deck area, the pool area, that also wouldn't open or close properly. So there was movement there. There was also water that came down at the column. The crack, what the video showed was that the punching shear failure occurred at two columns, and then the rest of the slab was being supported by the surrounding columns. But the slab had punched already through the column, and it was allowing water through. There was a lot of talks about water leaks, and basically there was a separation around the perimeter of the column that allowed water to come through. But the takeaway for me is, if you're let's say a layman, and even for us as engineers, to me, from what was stated there, I've never been at Champlain Towers South pre-collapse, but my takeaway was for my team and for property people that were on the property, managers, owners, etc., was that had they noticed the serious movement in the planter, that would have been a huge indication that something was seriously off. The gate, even though it may have seemed minor, that's something that should trigger someone now, a manager or an owner, might think even the slightest change might make a big difference. And again, the water coming down at the column, any anomalies. I think what the takeaway for me here is that it's kind of hard for all of us. What I've done in presentations, I talk about it internally in our office. This stuff is hidden. It's very complicated. I think what happened at Champlain Towers South, in my opinion, was a bit of a perfect storm, but it happened, and there were things that could have potentially been seen beforehand. And by the way, they did say that the punching shear failure occurred about 2 or 3 weeks before the actual collapse. So there wasn't a lot of time really. I don't think there may not have been enough indicators prior to the punching shear failure for an engineer or an owner to see that there may have been an issue there. Again, I hadn't been on the building. These are my points taken from what I've seen. Another big thing that I say is you cannot lose control of the design. This stuff is extremely complicated. These buildings they're built in a certain way. They're designed at that time. They're built, and soon as things start breaking down, the design strength, the capacity changes, and we can't fully quantify what that is. And so that's why you simply cannot lose control of the design. And you've got to repair these buildings when you see damage. And fortunately now we have a law that at least it gives us repair cycles at 10 years. So the takeaway for me again is be vigilant of the structure. If you see anything that's odd, I think the biggest thing that would have stuck out to me is the cracks in the planter and probably some major deflection in the slab. There was probably 1 to 2 inches of deflection that an owner or a manager may have seen, or an engineer had been brought on site. So that's generally it for now. Hopefully that information was helpful to you.